It was a day for romance, a day to give flowers, cards, and perhaps a sweet kiss. But in Chicago, on February 14th, 1929, it was the day of the most infamous gangland massacre in American history. As the city buzzed with Valentine's Day sentiment, a bloody war over control of the bootleg liquor trade had escalated to its deadly peak, and nobody was safe, not even a gang leader who wasn't where he was supposed to be. Prohibition had swept through the US, making illegal liquor big business. But with money came bloodshed. Rival gangs fought for territory, power, and profits. The Italian-Sicilian mob, led by the ruthless Al Capone, was locked in an all-out battle with the Irish-Jewish gang headed by Dion O'Banion. If this sounds like a film plot, you'd be right. This wasn't just any rivalry. This was the stuff of legend. The setup: a fight for the south and north sides. Dion O'Banion ran the north side, but in an odd twist, he also owned a flower shop. While most gangsters dealt in vices like gambling or prostitution, O'Banion's business was arranging flowers and running an illegal bootlegging empire. He also set up grand funeral wreaths for his gangster colleagues, which made his own murder in 1924 all the more poetic. Capone, meanwhile, ran the south side, and when O'Banion was gunned down, the battle lines were drawn. O'Banion's successor, George "Bugs" Moran, took over the north side, but Moran wasn't about to bow down to the Sicilian mafia. Then, in February 1929, Moran was tipped off about a cheap whiskey shipment coming from Detroit. A bargain too good to refuse, but it would be his last mistake. The day of the massacre. An unlikely hit. The next morning, as Moran's men waited for the whiskey, an unassuming Cadillac pulled up to the SMC Cartage Company garage. It wasn't just any Cadillac, though. It was a disguised police car. 5 men emerged, 2 dressed as cops and the other 3 as civilians. Inside, Moran's crew waited for a routine delivery. But 8 minutes later, the garage doors opened to reveal a scene of horror. 6 dead men, their bodies riddled with machine gun bullets. The gunman had executed them with military precision. A 7th, an innocent mechanic, was dying. The carnage left behind pools of blood and shell casings. Chicago's underworld had just been shaken to its core. The investigation. Capone's silent hand. Though Capone was conveniently out of town when the massacre took place, no one doubted who ordered the hit. Moran had narrowly avoided death. He'd arrived late, and some believed the gunman had mistaken one of his men for him. The police quickly pointed fingers at Capone's crew, but the investigation was complicated. 2 of Capone's men were accused, but one was murdered before he could testify, and the other had a perfect alibi provided by his girlfriend. Shortly after, he too was killed. Despite the drama, Moran and his North Side gang never recovered. The massacre had weakened them and solidified Capone's dominance. Aftermath: the fall of Moran, the rise of Capone. Following the massacre, the North Side gang crumbled, and Capone's Chicago outfit expanded its grip. The feds, focusing on Capone, eventually convicted him in 1931 for income tax evasion, sentencing him to 11 years in prison. Ironically, the crime that finally brought Capone down was the one thing he'd been avoiding: taxes. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre was a turning point. It marked the beginning of the end for Moran and the rise of Capone, who became one of the most infamous criminals in American history. So, the next time you're sending flowers, remember, in Prohibition-era Chicago, a bouquet could be a sign of either love or death. In Dion O'Banion's case, it was both, but for Moran and his crew, it was definitely their final farewell.